announcing the Borough President's initiative of expense funding, which will be small grants throughout the Borough of Manhattan for CDOs. And it will also serve as a press conference. I'm not sure what press has been confirmed at this point, but we are hoping that you can all make it as part of that committee, or send someone from your community board to be here in this room tomorrow at 2 p.m. Okay? If you haven't heard from us, you will hear from us today, later today. I left my notes in my office. I'm gonna have to find them. I don't. I got so much papers over there. I'm supposed to be doing the Borough President's report, and there's not enough coffee in me, and I left my notes at my desk, somewhere on my desk.
Go get them. So go get them.
Wait.
Okay.
Rosie, you can go get it. You want me to grab it?
You're gonna have to start looking all around. I
Go-
don't think.
Go get it.
You
can go get it, Rosie.
Let me go get it.
Yeah, because what's the point?
The clock is
You're
not
talking
ticking.
about that you don't have. That's a nice pen. What kind is it? Impact. I had the pleasure of attending CB8 meeting. Yes, you had a good meeting. I was saying that.
If I don't hit it just right, I'll wait there.
So we said, so when this said to me, the question was so interesting to me because I was like, oh, that's so interesting.
I think she said 2:30, but I'll be here too. Okay. Thank you.
I took pictures of you. And the lady, no, and the lady, let me just put this in. Oh, yeah.
Okay, I've returned. So last week, the Borough President held a public hearing on the borough-based jails. About 300 people attended. Community boards 1 and 3, who both passed resolutions on this matter, were there. And we will be waiting to see what happens, but there was testimony from both sides of the aisle, and it was a lively discussion that was had with people's testimony that day.
So this is
This is for the proposed jail on White Street between Canal and Center, which is going to be, I can't remember, 40 or 50 stories, which will dwarf everything around there. And so the local community is upset about the bulking, the size, the height, and the closed Rikers advocate feels like we need to do something immediately. And then there's the other groups who feel we should have no jails nowhere. So, you know.
Is there an issue that they're doing all 4 jails as one UR?
They're all in one
Someone from land use, I'm not sure.
All the four jails are part of one unit, so that's, a lot of people are objecting to that, and the lawsuit that was just filed in the Bronx, I think, this morning or yesterday.
Yep.
Was about that, was about all the different locations being in one unit. But we're, for our end, we're just mostly, so that's what the council's got to vote on, our end, we're just really focusing on Manhattan Center.
Because this mayor likes to do one size fits all. So, anyway. Last week, also, on Friday, we had the first inaugural Pride Ball in Harlem, which was fantabulous. And it was just a really nice event, and the LGBT community was very excited that this was the first time an elected official has acknowledged the communities that holds these balls. So, and Gail did not vogue for anybody, no. The Manhattan Paper Challenge, you want to talk about that, Aldrin?
Yes, and who here has heard of the Manhattan Paper Challenge?
We reported on it last month.
Yeah, no, but you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. In Manhattan, you could tell somebody something 7 times and they still claim they haven't heard it. So, the Manhattan, no winners yet, no winners yet. We don't start measuring tonnage until July 1st. But what's important for the community board chairs and the district managers, it will be repeated to them to know, is that the key here is each quarter, the tonnage of each community board will be measured, and it would be compared among the same community board's performance the year before. So community boards are competing against themselves, against their previous performance in terms of recycling of paper, of just paper. Now, I'm going to be sending a survey around to the chairs and district managers in terms of the intended audience. You could share it with your members if you want. And in terms of within your community district, which are some organizations that you feel are moving the needle around recycling, reuse, and reduction of waste? It could be broadly defined as well. Like if you feel a community garden falls under that, then that's fine. So that if your community board does win that quarter, Pratt Industries and Solid Waste Advisory Board, our office, and your community board would already have identified some organizations within your district that we will be recommending for the monetary awards. I think it's like 5,000, 3,000, and 2,000 per quarter, and then there's a grand award at the end of the year. So that makes sense. So we're going to source that. We're going to curate that list from community boards, right, from the chairs of district managers. If you have members within your board that you feel are better able, or maybe an environmental committee, or that are better able to get that information, but we want to know the 3, 4, 5 organizations within your community board that you feel, move the needle on environmental, recycling, reuse, and reduction of waste issues. All right? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, the Borough President's Office is reconvening the Mount Sinai Beth Israel Task Force. This summer, the Certificate of Need is expected to be filed, and so the task force will meet prior to the release of the Certificate of Need. Also, the Borough President will be reconvening her helicopter task force, particularly in light of the most recent tragedy. And do we have a meeting date for that, April?
No, I'm looking at sometime in July.
Sometime in July. Okay.
And will that include FAA, and will they somehow be involved? We've had meetings with them before. When I was transportation chair, we had regular meetings, when there were a lot of issues, maybe 10 plus years ago, with helicopters flying over the city, in way too many tours going over Central Park. But we had maybe even quarterly or twice a year, we'd meet with all the community boards, does anyone else remember that?
Sounds familiar.
And we had FAA
Mhm.
come, anyway, it was important to have them.
If you have a contact name,
Okay,
we've been
right.
looking for, like one of the last list of who was at these meetings,
Okay, let me find
and
out.
we'll reach out to them.
Okay.
Absolutely. So April is the point person on the task force, okay? Yes,
In reference to the Mount Sinai task force,
yes.
a little bit of a purview, what is it you're gonna be focusing on? Is it in general and?
Well, this has been dealing with the merge of Beth Israel and Mount Sinai, which covers boards 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. However, a lot of the services are being redirected uptown to Harlem and in
Yeah.
different
Right.
places.
Well,
So this really impacts,
Yeah, so
has
that's
a
why,
bigger
yeah,
impact.
I remember there were a few discussions as part of a task force.
Yeah.
As they were about to,
Right.
that initial, consultation and merger. And there are a few things that was happening, they were closing some internal, like internal pediatrics in, uptown, and they were opening just in, Roosevelt, I think, at the time. And so, we had a few meetings, but then there was no definitive, like, what's the outcome, what are goals, and what can we hold Mount Sinai to? One of the things that we were asking them was like continuous discussions, and then that fell off.
Right.
So we just wanna make sure, well,
We wanna make sure.
Yeah.
we wanna
We
make
do.
sure
Collectively.
Yeah.
that those goals are very
Collectively.
specific.
Okay.
And 7, we have traffic going between Mount Sinai West and uptown, back and forth. We think with sirens blaring morning, noon, and night, to the point that it's, on streets where there's no traffic, where they can, there's no one even crossing the light where they don't need the siren.
So when, Ryan Lewis, do we have we don't have a date, right? We're waiting for the con to be filed?
We have a date in July, I haven't sent out the notice yet, it's in early July, it's right before the con is sent out for the certificate of need for the Lower Manhattan facility. So we're gonna meet again then, we're also gonna meet with their real estate folks, cause they're selling a whole bunch of real estate in Lower
Yeah.
Manhattan. But in Harlem, there's the issue of Mount Sinai, particularly in some of the drug treatment that they're trying to open up. So Athena has been trying to get a date that everyone can make, but that also will be in early July, so we'll have a date with Mount Sinai and folks uptown to talk about that proposal of theirs, and also just in general, the services that they're providing and not providing in Harlem.
And I'll make sure that the liaisons follow up with the DMs when these
Yes.
meetings are set,
Excellent.
just,
That's good.
just in case you miss it
Yes.
in an email or something.
Thank you so much.
Okay. And just regarding the East Harlem rezoning, we've been doing a lot of work checking on a lot of things that were promised to the community in CB 11 that now they are not getting. So this is ongoing, and the chair and the DM have flagged that a lot of things that were very important to the community wasn't being brought to the table by the developers. So, and I understand there is a meeting this morning in East Harlem to discuss these very same issues. So, let me just ask Lizette, is there any land use matters that should be reported on behalf of the borough president?
I think right now the biggest one is Borough-based care. And we're continuing with our Soho, NoHo advisory group. Last week, preliminary sort of set of recommendations and guiding principles was presented in a public meeting, and we're expecting to finalize that in the fall.
Okay.
And we'll probably do a hearing on the resiliency, the East Coast resiliency, ebook, right? We're gonna do that in July as well, end of July. Sorry.
Religious facility,
The what?
the religious facilities research that we're doing.
We're, we've been doing a lot of work around this issue of religious facilities that wanna sell their institution because they're strapped for cash. But at the same time, they play a role in the community, they're beautiful, we don't want big high-rises going up. So Orlando and Stephanie and Regina, really everyone has been doing a lot of work around trying to figure out how to present alternatives, how to work with the congregations. There's different rules that govern different denominations. Tonight, we're co-sponsoring something with the Attorney General's office. It's a little bit odd for us because their focus is more sort of helping religious institutions navigate their way through the process. So we're co-sponsoring it, but we're kind of putting the word in that, you don't have to just sell, there may be some alternatives. And if you are gonna sell, maybe work with a nonprofit instead of a for-profit developer.
So can I ask a question? If the churches were going to do something about affordable housing, is it possible, they're not-for-profits, but are there subsidies, the kinds of things that other developers get when they're putting in affordable housing that could help them with cash without having to sell the property?
My understanding, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong, is that the developer themselves are the ones receiving the subsidies to develop the property, not the churches.
But if they were doing something themselves,
Yeah.
If they
As a
wanted to do
developer.
it themselves, I think generally, if the Catholic Church does it, I think they just sort of come out of pocket and bear the cost themselves.
Well, Lita, usually what's happening when the churches find themselves in this situation is they're cash strapped. So they wouldn't have the cash to actually do the development, and that's why they end up teaming up with the developer.
right, but I don't know, maybe there's some kind of relationship, and I'm thinking about the one on 110th Street on Central Park North and wanting the spot zoning to go up 33 stories. Also, there's a woman on the board whose husband is a board member of the church and is interested in talking. I mentioned the CB3 program I had gone to and would be interested in figuring out what possibilities there are to do affordable housing without having to develop towers and sell the land and that kind of thing. So it would just seem that there are potentials, but I don't know what they are. It's just really
No, I
a
think
shame.
you're right. So we're doing two things. One is if there's an individual site that you want to talk to us about, we'd be happy to talk to you about that site and see if we can, we have wonderful people in land use who are great at trying to figure out these things. In addition, we're doing a report this summer that sort of breaks down looks at some case studies and also looks at the different denominations because each church has its own set of bylaws. Some have to go through the Attorney General's office, some don't. So, we're trying to sort of give people some tools to work with churches.
And then the big takeaway from the CB3 thing is that for the Catholic Church, there's an appeal going on in the Vatican right now about the church in the village, Saint something, I'm sorry, I don't remember, that slowly closed down by cutting out different services and then is now just shutting down and wants to sell it and do something. But what they said was that canon law requires the community be involved in decision-making about what to do with these churches, and not just the church-going community, but the entire community, so of people who live around it. So that is something, that's what these experts who are actually battling lawyers in the Vatican about it, that's what they said the canon law requires. So I don't know, you're looking at me puzzled, but that's it for my information.
We looked at canon law when we were saving St. Bridget's. And actually, how we were able to save St. Bridget's, we actually ended up having to go into Supreme Court, was because they didn't follow canon law, but the canon law established a board which included the pastor, some other people from higher up in the Catholic structure, and it included some of the parishioners. And in that case, the parishioners were never called to a vote. But it didn't really include the whole community, but.
I don't know, that's what they
So-
said, so it might be worth looking into to see if it is, because then that would certainly broaden the influence and the possibility of doing something different.
We're trying to create a list of all the churches and houses of worship in our community, just so we have an idea of what, who's in trouble.
Okay.
And there's a problem with the air rights transfers too. St. Monica's on East 79th Street sold 100,000 square feet of air rights to Extel, which has the theory was you build the towers, it saves the tenements around it, the walk-ups. But instead, because they bought the air rights, they're now demolishing and getting rid of all of the tenements. We don't know what happened to the renters. We don't know how many, whether there was, and we had Extel at a meeting, and they said they don't know what happened to the renters because it was the owners of the building. So instead of this huge tower going up and saving the little ones around it, now everything is gone because of the air rights. And when they're not-for-profits, it just raises a lot of issues, and there are a lot of houses of worship all over the city. There's a map at that CB3 thing of possibilities of air rights, and that could just disrupt.
But air rights are also a solution.
Yeah,
Since they
so,
have to be looked at, and what the thing about the air rights is not that the air rights themselves is the receiving sites.
yes,
So that's the issue.
yes.
But looking at air rights is important to save the church.
Yes, and we were talking about them too, Ben Kalos, with respect to homes, which I was gonna mention also, with Furniture stuff, selling air rights. If there was a bank and something positive could be done, it's just a different, broader way of thinking. So yes, air rights could be the solution, but putting up a 100-story building next to the church is
That's the
not the
receiving
answer.
side.
Right, so there
So-
needs to be something.
Yeah,
And
just
anyway,
to-
this
just
is
to
way
cut in-
beyond
no,
what
no,
you
no,
were
but just to
saying.
cut in for a second, because it is
No,
something that we're
actually,
doing a lot of work on.
We've been putting in a lot of work identifying the most vulnerable sites for things like that. Sites that are that are not protected by any sort of historic designation, not located within a historic district, and are also located in medium density to high density zoning districts, right? Because of what you're speaking about. And we have identified nearly 200 sites, church sites. Not necessarily churches per se or places of worship, but properties owned by religious institutions. So it is something that we're on top of and have been working.
We're gonna have something by hopefully the end of the summer that will be helpful in identifying sites. We work with Beta NYC, has been really helpful, finding these properties and, and finding out what are the rules that govern each denomination.
We're also getting to understand religious nonprofit corporations law, which also governs, so it isn't just the canon law that requires things like what Rosie was referring to. They're still governed by state law, which requires things like entities or bodies within the religious institution that must call a formal vote, and there are procedural things that they need to go through, that they need to be held to by law.
Okay. All right, let's move on to chair reports. Let's start with CB12.
Okay, we have a number of items that are coming up this week and that have been coming up for a while. The Inwood rezoning agreement is one of the phases is coming in. With EDC, we've had meetings with them in terms of the Immigrant Research Center and the Performing Arts Center. So they gave us a presentation, and the cost figures approximately $15 million. And it's up for us to plan sites and do a lot of work.
How many million?
15.
15.
So they are doing it such that we need to search for an arts organization or that will be sustained. They've hired a consultant, I think in your public library, or another consultant to make sure that any particular vendor is vetted so that it continues. So it's just not dropping the money and then they after a year they're gone. So we want to make sure that it's a sustained thing. New York Public Library will get involved with the Immigrant Research Center, which is, all of this is kind of undefined. There's a special RFP, I think it's RFPE, so that you give a kind of undefined RFP where you're going to go, since it's kind of an arts organization or type of a museum, but you don't know the entire scope, so it gives you greater flexibility, and that will be done in a month or 2 months from now. The next thing we're involved in is with discussions with York Presbyterian Hospital. It's a very sensitive issue. They have been vacating a few small businesses, including Restides, which is in our neighborhood. It has caused some disruption amongst the community. They wish to build a new 13-story building, which obviously is non-contextual. They've not hired an architect. Essentially, it's in the hands of their facilities manager wants to demolish the current structures that are there. And it will be a hole in the ground for a long time because they wish to put a parking lot underground, but that requires them to spend a year to 3 years negotiating with the MTA, and I wish them luck if that's going to be successful. In addition, we already have problems with the MTA in terms of the elevator excavation in that area, and so there's a lot of host of problems. Essentially, it's all conceptual. They wish to put what we consider a luxury hotel there, which they're calling a guest facility. They wish to have 130 licensee arrangements, 130 SROs, which will be a licensee arrangements. That is a very contentious situation with their employees and their union 1199 because of control of employees, and there's already been a lot of problems associated with it, and there's no cap. They also have licensee arrangements with several residents who are not working for the hospital, and there have been problems with that. So we need to have further discussions. The heart of this apparently is a family, early family childhood hub, which we wish to have even more discussions with that in terms of the direction that it will be going, and the further involvement of more CEOs into that center as well. So what we're saying, and we'll have a resolution on Tuesday, is because all this is conceptual, because we don't want them to demolish everything all at once, because it does create a big problem in terms of all those stores that are there, we want a timeout until all these things are worked out. So again, we've had at least 3 meetings, and we will continue until there is some resolution on that. Speaking about Tuesday, we have 37 liquor license resolutions to consider at our general meeting. And oddly enough, the meeting will be held at New York Presbyterian itself, so it'll be rather exciting. We're also very happy in the new budget because we did pass a resolution for social workers in schools, and I understand there'll be, with Thrive, 285 new social workers into the Department of Education, which surely needs them. So we're also excited about the new rent laws, and we are making every effort to distribute them in Spanish and English so that people do understand. There is a brochure that Palente Harlem has recently released, and we'll make that available if everyone wants to partake and see what those summary of those rent laws are. So essentially, that is our state and the halfway of the year for the next recess, for our recess summer. We still are busy. We have to install a lot of computers. I'm also happy to hear, I guess it's true that we got an extension, a renewal of $42,500, which we will spend wisely, and hopefully everybody else will. And I don't know if it's baseline or not, but I think there are some restrictions.
No cars.
No car.
Can I just say, I just want to just cut in for a second, because we did a letter to the mayor about all the budget priorities, and we included in it, that we wanted this money for the community board to continue. And so I think a lot of you district managers got calls from our staff saying, what did you spend the money on before? And I have to say, the way that the money was spent was just great. Like, it was really things that helped the community. It was making meetings more accessible, increasing the capacity of the office. Like, that car thing made the news, but like, just the list that we came up with, from calling all your district managers was amazing. Like, you guys really spent money in such a great way, so I'm really happy that it got renewed again.
So maybe now we can help Noel and his initiative?
Yes.
It's help you, it's help your DM, it's
Do
help
it,
your
just do it.
Okay, there'll be time for commercials in CB11.
CB11.
Okay, I'll make this kind of brief. Okay, so we have the ongoing saga of Children's Aid Society and the selling of the corner property. They've been in talks with Mount Sinai, who's going to be a primary tenant of that space, to see how the developer can buy the rest of the property and build and condo in a space for Children's Aid. I think the community originally did not go for that idea, but it seems like the advisory board and Children's Aid is moving in that direction and are in talks with the developer to potentially sell the rest of the property, if they haven't already done so, to acquire space within the new building. It is my understanding that the developer will be building a park and an area where neighborhood kids can play basketball on that. It's nowhere near what they had. I'm not quite sure their rationale since they keep buying up property elsewhere. So I'll keep you guys informed on that. We had the opening of the New York Proton Center. We are very excited that such a state-of-the-art facility will be available to everyone, not just for CB11. Obviously, it's housed in CB11, but it's an added boon to the fight against cancer and other cancers. So we're excited at that having that tool available to medical field at large, but especially to our residents and to our community that may be challenged with severe diagnoses. So we had the ribbon cutting. We also had a ribbon cutting at Thomas Jefferson Park because we all, through the New York Junior League and CB11 and other partners, scraped and painted, and you don't want to see the pictures. And so we had a ribbon cutting, so the park looks fabulous. We have new greenery, and it's being enjoyed citywide. So we're happy about that. We also had earlier this month our festivals, our weekend festivals, and as a prelude to the Puerto Rican Day Parade. I attended. It was great to attend the press conference regarding the Manhattan Paper Challenge. I will say that we are, I believe, last in our tonnage in terms of paper, and we're hoping to beat our record. So we got it on. I'm just telling you all, we're gonna come out fighting this time.
Trash talk.
Trash talk. There will be an RFP released for the redevelopment of 2 public lots in our community, 2 of 4. One is the East Harlem Multi-Service Center, and one will be the NYPD lot. HPD is putting its final touches on the proposal, and they are incorporating comments from CB11. The community has stated that they would like the integrity of the multi-service center kept intact. So they're talking about potentially a gut rehab, and the community was overwhelmingly in support of maintaining services. 13 not-for-profits will be displaced because of the redevelopment of that property, who has already been redeveloped once. The property split and made affordable housing on the corner, and now the city wants to develop the whole thing. So we're seeing how the potential of keeping community-based organizations to be folded in the project. So that's a work in process, and we'll know once the RFP is released. Padmore can speak to the J. Marion Sims statue because he's the lead on that. On June 25th, we're having our Economic Development and Culture Committee has put together a small business fair. It will be held at the Harlem Neighborhood Action Center, and it will be from 10 to 4. And it's a way, a whole bunch of resources have been gathered that will be there to allow small business owners to come and have their leases reviewed and any legal issues and recommendations, and it'll also give them the ability to network. We are having a RAD forum in September. We originally had it scheduled for June, but because there was the district leader elections and other things, and we had a lot of people involved in that, other things came up, so we just thought we'd reschedule. I have been working with the Harlem Neighborhood Justice Center, in particular Jamie Gutierrez, Metropolitan Hospital, Lena Moran, and others, in an LGBTQ convening. That was originally scheduled for next week, but because of the measles outbreak, people have been deployed, and so we are putting it off potentially till July. The focus of that convening is to assess the services for LGBTQ individuals in East Harlem. A report was issued about services. We didn't seem to see East Harlem services included in there. And so we need to get, and we know we have some, we know we have services. So we're trying to assess current services, plus providers that are currently providing different services to see if they can tailor and specify as needed for that population. And I think that might be all. Okay, thank you.
Okay, CB10.
Good morning. Cicely Harris. I'm Chair CB10. So we've got a lot of things going on, just like everyone else. We're in the midst of hiring a community coordinator. We've been trying to do this for the past 2 months because we have a small staff of 2 people right now. This is a DEM and a community associate. So we tried to do that yesterday. I don't know, I'm still in talks with the Borough President's office as to next steps because we called a special meeting and we only got 25 people, which is short, 1 person short of quorum. So we're still in the midst of trying to hire. This is our 3rd attempt at trying to do this. So we're really trying to get this done, but that's where we are on that. Some good news, we did host an education good luck to graduating seniors program on last Saturday. We gave away 3 laptops to some deserving graduating seniors. It was hosted by us in Silicon Harlem. So Silicon Harlem came in and did a kind of trial run with drones. And so the seniors got to compete and make their own drone and then fly the drone around an obstacle course, and they won gift cards for that, like Apple Store gift cards, Amazon gift cards. So we were able, and these are all donated things that we got from just community supporters. So we were able to do that, and I think we had 50 teams come. We're hoping for a bigger turnout next year because we have a lot of folks that actually contribute to this.
That's great. It's wonderful.
We also had a senior hiring fair for our seniors in our population. We have a lot of seniors in Harlem that are still looking for work. So we had a job fair for them to come out. We had 110 seniors come out, and I think we had 15 providers. And I think half of those folks got jobs at our senior hiring fair. So that was a really good success for us. Secondly, we had talking about the churches and the issue with low parishioners and them now actually trying to sell their lot. We had La Hermosa come, that's the 110th Street development at 5th Avenue. We were not able to support that ULURP at this time. There are a lot of issues with that. So we're still, as we've discussed, so we're still in talks with them. We want to be able to, help them as an institution. They have done a lot of good things in the community. They host so many programs there, including a cute little movie night where they show movies on the side of the building, and a lot of people come and enjoy that. It's something free and lovely for the community. So we want to make sure that we're able to support them. So we're continuing those conversations. So hopefully we'll be working with them in Borough President's office and anyone here at the table that is interested in furthering those discussions. We have a troubling situation with the Lincoln Correctional Facility. That's at 110th between 5th and Lenox.
Mm-hmm.
It's closing. So we just found out about that maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. We had no warning about that. And it has been an institution in the area, but we did not receive any notice about it closing. So we don't know what it's used for. We're hearing that there'll be luxury apartments there. So it's not going to be used for any reentry purposes. That's what we want in our community, and that's what we need. It may not be a correctional facility, but while you're closing Rikers, you're going to close Lincoln Correctional Facility. So it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to us. So we want to look at how these facilities are being used, and why does the community have any say in what's going on in its community? Right. So if it is a luxury apartment building, that's it has great views of the park, but that's a very sad state of affairs if that's what it's going to be used for and not an institution to continue facilitating reentry for folks that need that.
Is that a state facility?
It is.
Yeah, so that's different than the Rikers.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, but it's the same kind of conversation that
Yes,
we're having
exactly.
here.
Yeah,
When you're looking for putting in these, our little jails in their community, and we already have something that's utilized in that way. And it actually is a really good facility for the folks that are in there. The views that it does have is when they work out on top of the building, you actually have views of the park. People pay millions of dollars for that. But
Right.
these folks who are in that facility,
Right,
being
right.
rehabilitated, have that luxury there.
That's why
And
they
they're
wanna
taking that
put
away from them.
apartments.
So it's the same conversation, you know, I understand it is a different kind of entity that oversees it, but it's the conversation we're talking about criminal justice reform and what it means to those folks who are in that system. So that's something that we're talking about. And lastly, continuing the substance abuse conversation. I've talked to Committee Board 11 and 9 and 12, and all of us have talked about this. We have a moratorium in our area on these substance abuse clinics. But we want to revitalize that and actually make it more current, because we had it in 2008. Things have changed. A lot of things that we saw as, you know, a problem are now we're classifying it as a disease, as an issue. And we don't want to criminalize or victimize folks with our moratorium. So we're actually talking with Kindergarten 11 and 9 to actually facilitate a task force meeting during the summer. That's gonna involve the community boards, 125th Street bid, and our community, and like the actual constituents, not just us that are on the board and the community boards making the decisions, and not just politicians, but actually people in the community that are affected by it. So I think we're gonna have that in, I'm gonna talk to Melissa and Pat more. It's gonna happen in July or August, whatever time we can facilitate that. We've talked about maybe having 75 to 100 folks. It's gonna be a small working group where we will put things out on Eventbrite and actually kind of monitor it that way, so we can make sure we have a good mix of community board members, constituents, and elected officials. So that's it for Community Board 10.
I had a quick
Thank you.
question.
CB9?
Oh, sorry, I had a quick question for CB10 regarding the closure of the St. Nicholas Staff Center.
Oh, okay, yes.
How is that gonna, like, is the community concerned, is that CB, so, can you touch on that a little bit? Like, are y'all concerned about that closure, or is it kind of expected, or?
No, it was not expected. We found out about it in Patch. We didn't have any kind of notice about that. And I'm reading those stats that they put in there. From what I know and from what I'm seeing in our district manager and the complaints we've received, those stats that said only 90 people are served and that it's an underserved location, we don't see that. I don't know where those stats came from. It doesn't really say that in the article. It doesn't give the background of those stats. And then to reroute everybody to East Harlem, I think that is going to be, you know, a lot of those folks that are deserving of those benefits do not have the funds to even get over to East Harlem to figure out what their next steps are. So yeah, we are disappointed in that. We've talked to people, we're trying to get a conversation, but it's gonna happen next week. So we're kind of always behind the 8 ball.
What's the facility?
It's a SNAP facility
SNAP.
that's closing in
ridiculous.
Central Harlem.
That's
So-
ridiculous.
But yeah, we're concerned.
CB9?
Good morning, everyone. I want to start by saying that this will be my final. Board meeting. And there's a lot of stuff that's going on, and I will go through some of those, but I think I will begin to say that the most important thing that has happened as part of my time on the board in the capacity as chair has been a wonderful relationship that I've built with the other chairs, the board president's office, the agencies and everyone. But yeah, I think that the group of folks, 12 folks around here, incredible, powerful, dynamic, strong. The support that you have provided to each other, to me, has been incredible. I'll never forget that. I mean, I have grown so much as a person because of each and every single one of you. So I want to say thank you. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening as we're closing down, and we actually will be having elections tonight, so be able to determine who that person will be succeeding me. For the most part, we have definitely moved over the 4 years that I've been chair, and I think we intend to keep that movement positive going forward. There's some good people that are running in executive positions, and we expect that to continue. And I also want to recognize June this month. Yesterday was Juneteenth. So we did have recognized its impact and the role it has in American history, and that we continue to move forward in that spirit of complete, true liberation. And also the fact that this is LGBTQ month. There's a lot of activities. One of the things that we have been able to do was to form an LGBTQ task force And one of the first times that we specifically put in requires 40 LGBTQ community within our district needs statement. And so that's something we'll continue to do, and we implore all the other boards to do that as well. So there was a mention to the fact of the moratorium in terms of the substance use programs that are in the Upper Harlem area, Upper Manhattan area. We have had the opportunity to speak and sit on what was the first beginning of an advisory board for Argos communities. Argos was that facility that was trying to come in the residential area, thanks to the Borough President's office as well as other elected officials, and I have to say a very big push by the community and support from the board that it did not happen in that area. They are kind of looking for another place to be able to do that, and we have asked that we are part of that conversation. They have agreed. It took a lot of movement to get that to that position, but as we are sitting on that board, we also don't want to say, yes, you have this board and it's almost perfunctory and you're going to be doing things without necessarily running things by us and saying, yes, we have a community board and we have been given the okay to do this and that and that. So we do want to have that board have teeth. We want to try and hold it in a neutral area, and everyone has said the board's role is very important in that, so we will be holding a very important and centralized focus in maintaining that Argos continues to move forward in the right way as per the request of the community along that. I also have to say that, and I think that's one of the themes of the time I have been chair, is to try and build coalitions, especially across the Upper Manhattan boards. One of that came out, we recently had a housing forum, and that included CB7. CB7 has been very involved in a lot of stuff around NYCHA with us, so we are very appreciative of that. But basically, a lot of chairs around 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I think we tried to get 12 wasn't able to attend. But addressing many of the housing concerns that have impact across many of our districts. And so again,
And Pamela, we're going to invite the other boards for the next meeting.
that'll be fantastic. And I appreciate your presence, being there. I was unable to attend, but I heard you spoke very eloquently and everyone was moved by your presence. So, and that it was very good to have had you there. Thank you, Roberto. But the intent is for us to speak as a collective body addressing many of these issues. We passed a resolution for many of the rent laws that came out. And we're encouraging other boards to do as such. We will be working with Harlem Palante, which actually meets with it's in our district, in terms of getting information out around that, so that those that are in situations where housing is a right. Proper housing is so important for health and so many of the issues that we want to ensure that is something that is due to them. We have also been able to, we have embarked on, and through the funding that we received, the $42,500, some of that funding we've been working with City College to do a comprehensive study of a lot of the housing stock that's in our district, but it's it's addressing commercial businesses, it's addressing developers, it's addressing public safety. And we intend to be able to have that not as a one-time report, but to be able to go back and collect data on an ongoing basis. City College have agreed to move forward with that. We're giving them a certain amount of money to accomplish that. Together with that, we have gotten the okay from the president of City College that many of the issues that are facing some of the committees, we will be approaching them as part of the development of the curricula. So the professors and the students will be working on some of the issues, challenges that we are facing in our district, and they're going to be taking it on as real world problems that the students will be working on. We have formed a relationship with Columbia University in that same vein, and so both Columbia and City College will be working with us in that capacity. Columbia University have come back to us in terms of, and this is part of Silicon's Harlem, they are working on a much more upgraded network that will be allow for greater access to Wi-Fi, but also a larger source of access to data. And so some of the data that we'll be collecting from the City College program will be entering into the larger database that we can provide to the community and be able to make real life decisions on how to improve and address issues that they're facing. So we have the opportunity to work collectively with both Columbia and City College and address any challenges that they have had and to bring those two together and work for the benefit of the district. So we think that was a really big win. In reference to the J. Marion Sims statue, on August 10th, right now, there will be an event where currently there are 5 finalists that have been pared down. Those 5 finalists will be selected as one artist will be creating the monument to replace the J. Marion Sims statue. Before that, there will be a community engagement to ensure the community is aware of it, be part of it. There is, as part of the process, the Department of Cultural Affairs creates a panel, a 6 or 7 body panel that will make a decision on that final artist, but the community will have the opportunity to kind of lobby and encourage the panelists to decide in one particular way as to who that final artist will be. So we're going to be encouraging that there is a strong presence of the community, and it's not just our boards, 9, 10, and 11, it's the entire Manhattan, it's the entire city. This is a forever monument that represents, a stain on the legacy of America. It has been removed, and now we have an opportunity to put something up that speaks to the inclusivity, liberation, and healing. And so we ask that everyone be part of that process. There's a lot of other things going on. We will be meeting with our housing, our parks. We'll be meeting over the summer to address a variety of issues. I'm not going to take up any more time, but again, thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this body.
Before we continue with the chair reports, I just want to announce that Ariel Pellets from the Office of Nightlife will be making a presentation, has arrived. So there's a lot to report from the chairs. So either we make the reports a little shorter, unless the chairs are willing to let Ariel start making her presentation now.
You can do short.
Short? Okay, CB8.
Homes, so we got rid of the Holmes Tower at NYCHA. Thank you to Gail and thank you to Ben, except we don't know what's coming and I'm rather cynical about it, so that's a big thing. Still fighting height limit. Lenox Hill wants to be like New York Presbyterian or Columbia Presbyterian, except it's in a residential district, so they have visions of 50-story building on Lexington Avenue. E-scooters, we're really concerned about it, legislation up in the state. I don't know if anyone else cares, but if you care, then call state legislators because someone was just killed in Paris. The CDC is doing a study. They're unsafe. Vendors need to be looked at because there was an incident with an elevator at the subway. People were trapped for an hour, 17 people, and the fire department couldn't get past the street vendor because it was too close to the subway. So that's an issue. And the DOB has crazy rules. I'll wait till next time. And the building that's too big that Gail wants to lop off the 5 stories is not only is it too tall, but they misread or misused the zoning resolution, so the bulk of the building, which should be below 150 feet high, is above it, which is in contravention of the zoning resolution. So that's only, I don't even know how that happened, that someone found it, but these plans and buildings need to be really examined. So you have land use people, this was through Friends of the Upper East Side, but there are huge potential problems, and with the blight of all of this overdevelopment. I'll end on that note. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope that was fast enough.
That was good.
Yes, awesome.
Impressive.
CB7.
We're going to have a parking forum in the fall. We'll invite everybody else to look at the use of the sidewalk, of the curbside space. The Central Park West Bike Lane is going to be controversial at our full board meeting. We requested a bike lane. We requested a protected bike lane because someone was killed. Unfortunately, to get a protected bike lane means losing 400 spaces of parking.
400?
Yes, we voted unanimously for it at the committee meeting because, but it's going to be very controversial. The housing program that Hadmore referred to, we're going to meet again in August. It was very successful, it was very helpful, and we just decided to include all the other boards that weren't invited. We're still working on Excessively Tall. We're starting our senior task force in July. The groundbreaking for the American Museum of Natural History Gilder Center was really quite a hoot. They had a gazillion people, and just a funny piece quickly. They had the children from PS 84 dressed in costumes as bumblebees, ladybugs, and butterflies. And they were absolutely adorable. And that's it.
Okay, CB6.
Number one important thing, Senior Resource Fair tonight at Borough College. We're hosting that at 25th and Lex from 3 to 7. So it's this afternoon for seniors, rental assistance, blood pressure, mental health, vision screenings, diabetes screenings, so all sorts of great things there. We had a really successful hate crime education forum in May. It was an amazing panel, and it was, again, at Borough, but it was just very powerful. Mark Levine moderated for us. A lot of things, we passed the ESCR Reso. We're working with CD1 and CD3 for their Lower Manhattan coastal resiliency, and just talking about lessons learned from CB3 and CB6 on that. And then there's a lot of the things, but I can share them with you later. We're working on the Mount Sinai Beth Israel area for our area. As they're selling their properties off, we're trying to really work closely with them and stay on top of that, so we'll work with you on that. That's it.
CB5.
So I'm Wally Rubin, I'm the district manager, sitting in for Vicky Barbero, had to take a grandchild to summer camp. Marble Collegiate Church, which is at 29th and 5th, came to us for 2 items this month. One is that they want to replace their sign in front of the church with a television screen. And the other is I think it's an interesting for everybody, because it's such a difficult issue, which is that they came to us with a BSA application to have in their backyard a small extension of the building to accommodate an elevator leading to a new tower being built next door. They were insisting, not inappropriately, that we only look at the elevator, this little space right outside their building. When in fact, they've now combined zoning lots with the tower going up next door. They have a financial stake in the tower next door. And they told us nothing about the tower next door. The only things we really found out about it were from the website of the developer, that it could be a 60-story tower.
And this is a landmark building, isn't it?
Marble Collegiate is, yes, a landmark building. So this was of a lot of concern to us. We ended up voting it down, saying that we couldn't possibly just take the elevator alone without some consideration of what was going to be built next door. The other issue that we're very concerned about is the current carting legislation, the commercial waste carting bill that Councilmember Reynoso has up before the City Council right now. It calls for exclusivity zones, meaning that there'll be only one carter chosen per zone, and we believe that's the wrong way to go. We believe that a monopoly will drive up costs, that in LA they found that the program had huge cost increases. When it worked that way, it'll lower customer service, it'll drive carters out of business, and only incrementally affect efficiency. So we're very much against the zones being exclusive, and we're hoping that we may get support from other community boards in the borough as well. Thank you.
Okay, CB4.
Short. Okay. Quickly, we had a small business forum co-led with people from the Speaker's Office, and was very successful. We brought small businesses together with representatives from city agencies, and started a conversation, which is what's important, everybody getting to know each other. That's important. We had that very successful. It was yesterday. We had been planning it for a couple of months. 2 biggest items in our district right now: Port Authority bus terminal, rebuild. The period for comments on their draft They're not at the EIS yet, it's only moving towards the EIS. It's a 120-day period, it ends in September. We're continually in dialogue with them. We're gonna have official testimony, if that's the word, conversation, testimony, in July, and then again in September. They're having 2 big meetings for public comments. Our issues are get all those long-distance buses off the street, reduce air pollution in the district, and have a storage facility for all those matinee buses that are idling on Wednesdays and Saturday afternoons in the district. And also, some of the buses, commuter buses idle also. They don't go back to Jersey, they just hang out on 10th Avenue and 11th Avenue now, find a space for them. So this is very big, this is very important to us, and I assume it's also important for like CV5, which should be involved, and CV6 perhaps. Everybody is involved with the Port Authority there. Also, RAD, I was interested in have a RAD forum.
September.
Fulton Houses, which is a public housing project in Chelsea, sort of, they announced in a, I'm just gonna use the word devious, not devious, sort of it just slid out publicly, that there was a plan to build a new building on site, move people from existing housing into the new building, tear down the existing housing, the low rises along 9th Avenue, and put up market rate housing or a 2080 house, whatever. We finally got a hold of housing for an official presentation, New York City Housing Authority. Our position as the board is you do not tear down public housing. There are other ways to go about to provide money, to find money, to provide housing. You do not tear down public housing. We are not Chicago, we're not St. Louis. No matter how you can say, oh, we need a new boiler here or a new roof over there, we're not those cities. This is a resource for today, and it's a resource for generations to come. These are good apartments. You don't tear them down. And we're actually now talking with Housing Authority, with people from the Speaker's office, providing them with alternatives. Air rights. They looked at us when we said air rights. What are air rights? Not quite that, but you do have air rights there, and you're in Chelsea. There are receiving sites. Maybe this is another way to do it without tearing existing housing down. So we're in ongoing conversation. We have worked with the Housing Authority before. This is not the first time. On Fulton, the Fulton housing development area, there is already a new building that we helped them create. Private developer, but affordable housing. We also have one in the Chelsea houses, which is north on 25th Street, 26th Street. We also built, we engaged the developer and the Housing Authority. And we also said to them, look, Fulton Houses is only, 8 blocks away from Chelsea houses. Let's look at them as a totality. Let's not look at one or the other, because there are air rights on both, and see what we can do. This is hopefully, when you're having a negotiations conversation, you have to make an assumption that the other side is there for real, that they're not just playing, and that one morning you're not going to wake up and look at the paper or hear on the television that the building was torn down, even though they're talking about saving it. So we just assume that they are for real, and that they are in earnest in conversation with us, and we'll entertain some of the proposals we're coming up with. That's the short.
Okay, CB3? Anyone? CB2?
All right, so as touched on a little bit earlier, we just finished our role in the Envision Soho NoHo advisory group process, which was 17 meetings since January. The group was convened by the 3 plan sponsors, including Borough President Brewer, Councilmember Chin, and the City Planning Commission. It's the beginning of a long process. I think that the looking at the underlying issues that could potentially lead to rezoning and looking at all the issues is huge. So it's we'll see where this process takes us over the next years. I think that there's a the public is very interested in this, and there's a lot of I think different opinions, but there's also a lot of areas for agreement too. So we'll have to see as we move forward how that plays out. We had 2 presentations for the revised designs for the DEP shaft water sites in our community board. It's an interesting part of how we spend our money is on scanning and digitizing some of our old records, and we would have, if we did not have a board member who was on the board in the late 90s, we would not have known that these 2 sites were promised as parks after they were completed by going back and looking at the old records. So that's something that we're really looking forward to, having all of our records digitized so that people can look through the historical sides of those things. And I also wanted to thank Councilmember Chin for the additional funding for one of the sites that allowed the Parks Department to present a better plan that contained a little bit more seating, more plantings, and more greenery. Pier 40 was touched on last month with Dan. Some of the community boards have some different positions on that, but it's, I believe, going to be voted on today. It's in the extended session in Albany, so I'll leave it at that in the interest of time. One last thing, or 2 things I just wanted to bring to attention to the other chairs, is that the Small Business Services Commission is looking to streamline the Sidewalk Cafe licensing process. So they're looking to do away with one of the hearings that occurs at DCA, which our Sidewalk Cafe committee has started the discussion this month. We'll be continuing the discussion next month, and potentially, if they're going to do away with that hearing, to allow more time for the community boards to review them, so we have an extra 15 days, which, as many of you know, will allow the full, allow it to be put on an agenda within a month, whereas opposed to now, there's some tight turnaround times. And there's also, it came to our attention that DCA is looking to amend your Sidewalk Cafe Design and Regulations Guide so that businesses would no longer be required to remove the tables and chairs from sidewalks when the Sidewalk Cafe closes. And that's a big issue for a lot of our residents, because people may just go out and sit in the sidewalk cafes that are still set up and block the sidewalks, et cetera. So I want everybody to be aware of that. We're also going to be addressing that and maybe commenting to DCA. And I will leave it at that so that Ariel can.
We're having
CB1.
DCA next month, right?
No, yeah, but that's for district service cabinet,
So for the district service cabinet, we're gonna have DCA come to present.
right?
Okay, yes. CB1? No CB1 going once. I think Ariel Pellis,
Can I
please
just,
come
while
on
she's
up.
coming up, can I just add something, Rosie, quick? Just for the hospitals, because of all of that, we found that hospitals are really interested, the 2 that I've talked to about working with and promoting small businesses if there's a relationship. And so with all of the changes, if small businesses are willing to provide discounts or do something, that there's a way to foster the growth and the stability of small business working with these big institutions. See, I took up no extra time with that.
Okay.
Because they're still set.
Exactly.
Well, we're talking with HPD, like, we wanna try to get them together and just like have a meeting and see if maybe they can, we can all be talking about, besides small businesses,
Yeah. Yeah. I've gone with them for just small business, because they're already there.
Actually, just a 3-minute video, like an intro. Which I was happy to Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for this opportunity to introduce myself and the relatively new Office of Nightlife. I see just a couple of familiar faces here, but I look forward to getting to know you all better. A little bit about me. I'm a native New Yorker. I served on Community Board 3 for 6 years. I owned a bar for 10. And I think I'm in this position because I've been there, so to speak. This is just a brief 3-minute video that we produced to help communicate what this office is about. The Office of Night sure that nightlife works for all New Yorkers. We are here to work together with everyone to find a common ground so that we can coexist and thrive.
We are the city that never sleeps. And in order to protect New York City's nightlife, we had to value it and create an entity that was going to support it.
It's important for our quality of life, for our neighborhoods, for people's livelihoods, and most importantly, for our city's economic health.
We want to be supportive to small businesses, and we'll continue to push to make sure that it is the city that we can open up your business and run it as efficiently as possible.
The follow-up is very important to us now. We're trying to change our philosophies. We want the conversation to be meaningful, lasting, and proactive.
What can we do as a group to help secure safe spaces where residents are not being disturbed by noise and where we can have a thriving nightlife that doesn't disturb anyone?
We attract a lot of creatives and a lot of people who are LGBT, QT, POC specifically, because it's a safe space for them.
I live in the Village, and I've been involved in these issues for about 15 years when my block started changing from shoe stores to bars. We built a collaborative thing. We didn't take a dig in our heels approach, and we've been a success story.
Nightlife is where people come to life, where they gather to create, to celebrate, to fall in love, and to let go. We want to ensure safety and quality of life for everyone and to enable creativity and culture to thrive. The one thing we can all agree upon is that we all love New York, and we all want a vibrant and livable city. And although there are many perspectives on how we may get there, what is most important is that we do. And through coordination, communication, and cooperation, I believe we will. So, that'll wake you up in the morning. You know, it's definitely a fun little video, but I think it's really meant to try to communicate that we at the Office of Nightlife really recognize that this is a much larger issue than most people perceive it to be. And so I hope that it was able to do that for you. As I guess I could just get to my talking points here. So the Office of Nightlife, as I mentioned, was established a little bit over a year ago. And what a lot of people might not realize is that this is part of a nighttime economy management movement. It's been
There are almost 45 cities around the world that have already established an Office of Nightlife. And I think a lot of people in this room could ask the question, why hasn't one been established before, understanding the amount of issues that it creates and the opportunities and the impacts. And one of the things we did when we first started the office was create a economic impact study to help quantify what the nightlife industry brings. $35.1 billion in economic output. It supports 300,000 jobs and 700 million in tax revenue. But we also recognize the social impacts of that, and this office is really meant to help to support the businesses so that ultimately they can be better neighbors, and I think that's a really strong approach. And also to help be a mediator for the residents as well as all the city agencies. We're currently just an office of 4 people, so it's obviously a large task, but we have tremendous citywide cooperation. As you will have seen in this video, all of the city and state agencies that were on stage with us, we now convene in a dedicated interagency working group every 6 to 8 weeks to review and revise and even self-correct on how the agencies interact with the industry, the community, and with each other. We know that the community boards and a lot of the agencies are also liaisons and mediators. And a lot of times people ask, well, the community boards are liaisons, what do we need an Office of Nightlife for? And so I wanted to help to address that. We really want to be able to use this seat at the table within the mayor's office to help not only, we're not an enforcement agency, we're not a reporting agency, and while we do help with chronic or urgent issues that might arise, which we have done, we're really here to help to identify the systemic issues and to find more holistic solutions that everyone is dealing with on a regular basis. And we're also just another tool in the toolbox. So we get a lot of references from community boards, from police departments, city council members, about chronic or urgent issues, and then we can also help to convene and to be a liaison for the agents, for everyone involved to help push through solutions. Our approach really is proactive management of city agencies and resources rather than reactive, which has been really the history of how usually especially nightlife issues are. We're currently working with Community Board 3 on a pilot program in the Lower East Side where we're using, again, proactive coordinated resources with DOT, sanitation, NYPD, with CB3's blessing, passing resolutions, as well as with the bid. And it's really trying to see how can we look at this vibrant area and to similarly like parades or other like large events where a lot of people come in. New York has historically shown that we can have a large amount of people and clean it up and manage it in an efficient way that that provides less impact. And so we'd like to try to use that approach on a weekly basis. What I've learned in my new time in government is that most things are done in a daytime model. But this is a 24/7 city. And it's a nighttime, the other 9 to 5, as I say. And so I'm trying to see how the daytime models don't fit into the nighttime economy and to try to make those adjustments. And I really feel like with those adjustments, there could be a much better way to coexist with each other. And yeah, just to give you a little bit more of an idea of what we're working on. Again, the interagency working group that we work with, we also have subcommittees, and the buckets of the Office of Nightlife really are quality of life mitigation, red tape and regulation, working very closely actually with SBS and to help complement the work that they're doing, and again, to use the seat of the mayor's office to be able to really help push these things along. Also, social justice issues, LGBTQ rights, disproportionate enforcement, racial issues that are happening, women's rights, worker rights, immigrant rights. A lot of the progressive social agenda of the mayor and of our city is so concentratedly represented at night. And it's really important for us to be able to recognize why it's important to make sure nightlife works, because it really is a safe space for a lot of communities and people. And actually, we see it as an opportunity for people to look out for each other, to educate each other, bystander training, consent, working with Department of Health on drug awareness, and really using these spaces and life at night as opportunities to look out and to right a lot of wrongs and to make sure that marginalized communities have a safe space. People coming from all over the world, I think Pride is really a very good example of why nightlife is important and why it's important we make sure that it works for everyone. And really, we just look at it as like a multi-agency support for hospitality. We call it a MASH approach. And again, it's really just something that we want to make sure it works for everyone. We were going to all the borough cabinet meetings, precinct meetings, focus groups. And although I really have, lived this life and can speak to it and can recognize the issues, obviously it has to be a collective effort, and it's really important that we hear from you where you feel like, because I know we know what the systemic issues are. It's not a long list. It's the same: sound, traffic, horn honking.
Drunk behavior.
Yeah. Well, we're also working on public awareness campaigns on etiquette, patron etiquette, and to use humor and using all these marketing materials that we have, like the bus stations and subways and links, to be able to communicate people how to be better patrons, better operators, and better neighbors as well. So it's just the beginning, and we really want everyone to see the Office of Nightlife as an opportunity, another tool in the tool belt, and possibly the missing link we've all been looking for. So thank you very much. I'm happy to take any questions.
I know you said just 4 folks in your office, but are you able to come to different boards and speak to some?
Oh yes, we're out there hustling.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and how would that happen? Like our district manager can get in contact with you?
I mean, right now we think this is very efficient with the borough boards, and obviously, like, I'm happy to meet, there's a lot of boards, what, like 51? 59? 59, sorry. So, I think what, in light of total efficiency, what we're exploring, and this is all a work in progress really, is if your particular community board is having issues with particular venues and there are chronic issues with, that this venue and this neighbor, this situation, I think perhaps a better use of time at times is to go in a more focused and directed fashion. And then, as our load lightens up and we are able to go down, then of course to address all the individual community boards. But we're exploring that on a case-per-case basis.
So, community members who are not at this desk, who are not in this room, how would they know to be able to bring a problem to address they're not necessarily coming through the board? Is there, do you call 311? Is there a way, a hotline that you guys have or something like that?
We don't have a hotline as of yet, although we've discussed it. I would assume that when you call 311, they would be able to direct you to us as well. I think this is part of my tour of letting people know that it exists. One thing I didn't mention also, we did just recently launch a brand new website, nyc.gov/nightlife. And it is a one-stop shop that a lot of people also have been asking for in the industry community, where it's all the city and state agency resources and websites all in one place in regards to nightlife. And that includes community boards, build-a-blocks, how to identify your NCO, a lot of community-driven things. We're gonna be adding more guidelines, lists, campaigns, downloadable materials that venues can put in their bars to watch your belongings, and different guidelines as well.
So if a committee board is having a problem with a particular bad player,
Yeah.
if we would contact you, or if we would contact the block, or?
Well, you would contact us happily. What we're doing is we're working very closely with the police department. Whereas if there is a chronic issue that does not seem to be getting resolved, then rather than just escalating the amount of NYPD visits, summonses, and a march, and escalating the enforcement, we like to say, like, we'd like to try to accomplish compliance through reinforcement. And so actually all the way up to 1 PP through the NCO program, the officers will reach out to the Office of Nightlife and say, could you reach out to this venue? And then we go in through our lens, and perhaps a less intimidating lesson, because we're non-enforcement, and say, your speakers are completely out of whack. We also bring in DEP. This is what the multi-agency support is, where as opposed to the march operations, where all of these agencies go in to create shock, awe, and punishment at times because of bad behavior, this is to come in and say, you could do better here. Your security's all on their cell phones. Nobody's paying attention. Your security needs to see things in advance, not afterward. And being able to give more practical advice when you're running a club, sometimes you can't even see past your own face. And so being able to assist in compliance and to give them the opportunity to turn these red flags into gold stars, as we say. And we're also working, with neighbors as well. I really want to stress that even though the philosophy is that if we work with venues to stabilize and to be aware and to be better operators, they will ultimately be better neighbors. If there is a chronic issue, we will go in and have gone in, sometimes with PD, sometimes not, sometimes with DEP, and create a situation where everyone's sitting at a table in a non-threatening way. You're not in trouble. We're here to reintroduce you, make sure everybody has the right phone number, pinpoint exactly what is bothering people. Sometimes it's like the bottles being carried out at 4 a.m, they're driving people crazy. The 311 system and 911 or calling the community board doesn't always put the people in touch with each other where the real solutions can happen. And because ultimately people don't necessarily want bars to close, they just want them to not bother them. And I think what we're trying to do is help identify what we call the line between torture and tolerance, right? You know how much you can take, and then you can't take it anymore. And that line is a fine line, but it can be defined. And using new technologies with DEP, digital decibel readers are not just the ones you come in with, but that are constantly reading inside the venue, so that once that line, that digital line is being defined in these mediation meetings, you put the decibel reader at the DJ booth or at the manager's station, and they know where that line between torture and tolerance is. It's not necessarily the DEP code, but it is the personal number that that person has established with their venue. So it's trial and error, it's creative thinking, it's trying to, find, again, creative solutions to all of these repetitive problems we've had.
I had a question. First, I wanted to add, in your video, one of our chairs of our SLA committee is featured prominently in there speaking. Secondly, you may not know this meeting is live streamed, and I've have a question from one of our constituents in two, which is I've not ever received outreach or follow-up from the Office of Nightlife following the town hall meeting.
Who is that person? I mean, like somebody
Yeah,
from
from the public, yeah.
From the
Who
public.
came and signed up, and I remember when we were at that meeting, everybody had signed up and they didn't get anything back. And so the question was, what's the ongoing engagement from the Office of Nightlife for the people who are...
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. And my apologies. Again, this is, especially after the town halls, it was, let's just get in, settled. We didn't have a website even up until a couple of weeks ago, really. And we're establishing chains of communication. We're doing as much personal outreach as possible. However, in regards to residents that may have gotten up and spoken, especially the one that you see at the end who said they've had success and didn't take it.
The co-chair of our SLA licensing
And
committee,
he's
Cormac.
amazing. And in fact, as I was mentioning with the dedicated interagency working group that we have subcommittees, and with those subcommittees, we also have focus groups. And those focus groups will then go back to the interagency for co-designing efforts on how to come up with new solutions. We have gone through several of those focus groups. The residential and quality of life is coming, and that gentleman is on our list of people to reach out to, and those that spoke in a way that we feel will be contributory to a conversation of solutions and healing will be reached out to. We're also just sent out one newsletter based on all the emails that we got. It was actually to introduce that we have a newsletter now and to give the entire industry, 20 to 25,000 venues, know that Pride was coming, that we're expecting 4 to 6 million people, how to prepare your business, open up your bathrooms to people that might need them, giving guidelines. And so we will be upticking that outreach. And we also have a new Facebook and Instagram. It took us literally a year to get that. So we've spent the last few months establishing channels of being able to communicate, and we apologize for any delay.
So are you one of the 4?
Yep.
Okay. That was my first
Where
question.
each of us are 10, actually. And actually, Francesca Mira and Jose Sogard and Ray Martin, that is the other 3.
Wow.
Strategic, yep. And we're all here today. Strategic Planning, Deputy Director, Community Industry Outreach.
Regarding the guidance that you're giving to business owners now during Pride, is there any conversations about gender-neutral bathrooms?
Absolutely. We are communicating the law so that they know what the law is. And for today and beyond Pride. This is actually, there are a lot of teachable moments, as we've heard, and opportunities to educate the industry on what the guidelines and the laws are in the city. And a lot of the city agencies are looking to us actually when they have messages that they would like the entire industry to hear, that we put it out, whether it's on our Facebook or on our newsletter.
Question? Go ahead.
Yeah, do you have any proposed guideline changes in the state ABC law pending and for the next legislature?
For the state
Yes,
law?
yes, for either this session, which is over, or the new session that will begin.
We don't have any proposals for changes in the state laws at this moment. We're focusing on although I do recognize that it is a top issue for community boards and for local officials, but it's not necessarily something we're focusing on immediately.
So I raise that question because nightlife in one community board district is not the same as a nightlife in others. Some are more nightclub oriented. It creates a different kind of problem. So I don't know if you focused on different kinds of venues as a result of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, we understand it's a very vast gamut that defines nightlife and life at night, as I like to say. Small mom and pops up to, major clubs and venues. And yeah, each neighborhood and each type of venue is different, and everything needs to be looked at in a case-per-case basis, but there are also, like I said, systemic issues that I think are also universal, that from an operational standpoint and from being able to control the situation. And we, just yesterday I was on Dykeman at a police meeting with the bar owners. We've been in Far Rockaway. We recognize this is not a Manhattan-centric issue. This is 5 boroughs, and each borough and each neighborhood and each block, for that matter, has its own issues. When I was on CB3 on the SLA committee for 6 years, even in that neighborhood, it is a block per block case study. And so this first year, too, is about identifying the issues, identifying solutions, finding who our partners are, finding what the existing solutions are, existing resources. There are an unbelievable amount of resources in government that you just discover every day. And that's part of what also the website is to help communicate those resources and those solutions that people don't even know exist, to help them utilize them.
So another follow-up is it not only bars, but we have other cultural institutions
That's right.
that celebrate nightlife as well.
That's right.
So have you had issues or problems with them?
Well, I don't know about issues. Again, I like to use the term life at night as opposed to nightlife. I think it helps to encapsulate the bigger picture. It includes traffic, DOT, sanitation, lighting. There's so many elements, theater, sports. Obviously, I think the nightlife, bar, club, restaurant issue is probably enough for any office to handle, but we do see the larger picture and how proactive management of city resources to work in concert with each other in a nighttime model rather than the daytime model, and to be able to use examples in this city and in other cities and countries around the world that have nightlife offices. We can learn from them, and we can do better by having an office dedicated to just that, and that's what we hope to be.
In a case where a business, they're just such bad actors, like recently we had a case in CB5 where the staff were charged with impersonating police officers, wearing spiked shoes, carrying batons and mace.
Wow.
And, they voted against, and passed a resolution against giving them a license.
Yeah.
There were several misdemeanors, I think possibly some felonies. Do you just stay away from those businesses and just say there's
No.
nothing we can do?
No. I mean, listen, everybody deserves an opportunity to do better and to be given the resources and tools to do better. But if they're not doing better and they think they're above the law or defiant, I mean, what really irks the entire nightlife industry is that we all know the majority of them are good, and they're good people and good businesses, but a bad business will spoil the entire perception of an entire industry. And so nobody wants a bad actor. We want them to be dealt with, and we want them to be removed if necessary. If the NCOs or the community boards feel as though or even the venues reach out to us as well for help, and say, we need guidance, how can we do better, we want to be good neighbors, what are these meetings we're supposed to be going to? Some people just don't even know sometimes. It might be out of ignorance rather than malice. That sounds a little extra, but, in that case, if they can't be helped, we would like them to be removed. One bad apple spoils the batch, and a lot of what this office is to really help to decriminalize such an important industry to our nighttime economy, our culture and identity, and to see how we can respect it, value it, and support it in a way that works for everyone, and to not see these bad actors as nightlife is a overall problem.
Are there any other questions?
Hi.
Thanks for being here. I'm
Thank
Laura from Councilmember Shin's office.
Oh, hi.
District 1.
Yes, of course.
That covers CB 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
And so for the downtown area, and find that there are lots of buildings that's converted into residential, and then there's these big establishments or clubs or big venues that they would like, those people coming in. For example, the former site of American Stock Exchange now is cooking, that like this 3,000, that can accommodate 3,000 people. And right next door is Trinity Place Parish Hall. So the whole neighborhood is already like screaming, no, it's just automatic reaction. And another major site that's controversial is 20 Exchange Place / 18 William. And as soon as they come in, the neighbors say, oh, even though they may be coming back with a traffic study to prove that actually it can host 500 people or 3,000 people. So what is the role of the Office of Nightlife to support the residents, to make them understand, or actually we can help them to really think about, is it really yes or no to welcome or not welcome those new establishments?
Thank you for your question.
The addition of this office.
Well, for example, with new development or new venues that haven't even existed yet, we have been welcome to come in at the very early stages, even from construction to the community board process or just the permitting process of building, to help to educate people as early as possible, the operators, right? The importance of having the best possible security company and what kind of questions to ask and what kind of plans you need to have in place and how to look outside your front door and to be able to assess what is happening out here and how to plan for that in advance. And I think with as much pre-education and preparation and making them sensitive to the potential impacts outside of their front door, I would hope at that point that can then be communicated at a community board meeting, a block association meeting, to say, this is how we're prepared, right? I think the residents get freaked out when new operators come in with some, idea of grandeur, like this is gonna be great and don't worry and we're bringing so much to the community, but without a plan. And that's when fear and, justifiable fear might take place. So I think through preparation and education and making sure, and then if your office felt it would be beneficial to have, rather than, to have a separate private meeting with the operators and perhaps those people in the immediate area. And we would be happy to attend as, again, another tool in the tool belt to just be there and to be a mediator and to be there to listen so that as they continue to operate, we can be there throughout. As issues arise, the mayor's office can call and say, remember me? I was at that meeting. This is the mayor's office of nightlife. We have a problem and we would like to help you resolve this before it escalates and people start, really using all of their resources to shut you down. So consider us a resource.
So I had one more question, which the same person had asked, as far as following up on the question that was addressed to Mike Jones at the town hall meeting, which was with stipulations, and what kind of, that's usually the agreement that a new establishment, sets up with the parameters as far as their business within whatever realm they're going to operate in. But those aren't necessarily available to anybody to review,
right?
Except for the community board and maybe some local neighbors who are involved in the discussions. But what's your office doing to help move forward, having those available either to the police department, to the members of the public, whatever it may be, because those seem to be really the space where a lot more establishments are being able to open where they might not otherwise have support of the communities. And so that's really, in our community board, that really is a big issue, in that we have, with the changing dynamics in the local real estate. A lot of businesses opening up in grandfathered commercial spaces that are smaller, that wouldn't necessarily in the past have seen a restaurant, that aren't on the avenues. And so I guess that's, the stipulations really embody what the agreement is, but what happens if nobody knows what they are and people start violating them? I guess how is your office working around those issues?
Well, I mean, we are not specifically dealing with the transparency of stipulations at this moment. I will be transparent about that.
Okay.
But I think, my understanding is most boards have sort of standardized stipulations that most people know about, right? Close your doors at 10, get the sidewalk cafes in by 10, music needs to be, I mean, they're not usually so varied, or probably shouldn't be so varied. And I think there is a general understanding of what the ethos of that neighborhood is and what's expected and what's not expected. You can see it from neighbor to neighbor. I think what's more important is that the venue knows what their stipulations are, and that they're adhering to them, and even also that those stipulations are fair also to the business and is also realistic to how business is done, and not also a setup for failure for the idea of having a stipulation to make somebody feel better because at least there's a stipulation there. I think it's important to make sure that stipulations are there that are realistic for the operation to run in order to be a good neighbor, so that they're not anybody affecting them
Well,
outside.
that may be true, but they agreed to them. So
Yes, and they agreed
that's
to
where
this.
it starts, yeah. Yeah, I mean, they signed, it's not like they were forced to do it. And that's where the trouble, some of the issues begin around certain places. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
we deal with. And so I guess that, having those available.
Like publicly.
Just this is what it is.
Hold on, I'm sorry, what?
There's a bill that was recently passed by the Senate and the Assembly requiring the selectors.
It's gonna be online.
Okay.
So there you go.
Will be online.
These are state issues, and we're from the mayor's office.
Right.
And so,
But they were raised at the town hall, that's why I just.
right, but that's also why we brought the state liquor authority there, because I know what our limitations are, and I like to allow, those that are the experts in those fields and are doing, that work. But of course, we wanna be informed, and thankfully Jose is, on what that bill is. I think, transparency is important. We also wanna make sure that, there is also understanding about the fluidity of life and doing business on a day-to-day, and if it's 10 o'clock, but it should be closed at 10, but it's 10:01. If there's like a list of full transparency, we also wanna make sure that the neighbors aren't like, sitting there like, and overly policing either. I mean, the residents should go on with their lives and live their lives and not be disturbed by venues, and not necessarily feel obligated also to be the enforcers of stipulations. And it could also cause, I think, a lot of tension, for everyone. I think for us, my role is to just make sure that those stips are working. And then transparency or not, it won't be the issue.
Dealing with the city laws, could you just give a brief description of the organized dancing laws and hookah laws, what is allowed and what is not allowed? Because there seems to be some confusion.
A lot of confusion.
Yes.
I can speak more fluently in regards to dancing, and I have peripheral hookah knowledge. The repeal of the cabaret law was a big success and win for the cultural community, in large part because it was also seen as a racist and homophobic law originally, that was used to stop people of color and gay people from dancing, and to have a law to oppress them. And it was dormant and then resurrected, and also weaponized against venues for a very long time. And the repeal was symbolic in many ways, but also misunderstood in the sense that everybody thought that meant everybody can dance everywhere. We actually are working on clarifying language to put on our website, if it's not there already, on what does the repeal of the dance law mean. It does not mean we can clear this table right now and have a dance party. You still need to be zoned properly. You still need to have the method of operation box ticked properly on your SLA application. You still need to be have the right amount of egress and the FDNY. You know, there's a lot of other rules that need to be taken into account that make it a safe environment. When you have a bunch of huge group of people dancing in a room, there needs to be sprinkler systems and other things. And so that does need to be communicated better by the State Liquor Authority, by the Office of Nightlife, and we have actually spoken about putting together a one sheet to distribute, to have on our website for the community boards, so that if even you guys are like, I can't remember what that is, you can go to the Office of Nightlife website and download like the top 10 things. What does the repeal of the cabaret mean and what doesn't it mean?
It's really very essential, I think,
Yeah.
for the public.
So
to know.
we'll elevate that to a top priority, and we've talked about it several times, and it's definitely on our list. In regards to hookah, I mean, that has also been controversial. You know, there does have an appearance of why this group of people. It has sort of certain undertones to it that have perception problems, especially because it was so popular for so long and is also seen as an alternative to drinking, and it's actually more loungy and quieter if you're sitting sometimes. But I think my understanding of the law is the percentage of sales between hookah and alcohol, and you have to have a much higher hookah amount of sale, which is not really realistic. I have nothing to do with this law. I don't know much about it, but I know that it's controversial, and I hope that the right people are working on it. And if and when it should come to our attention, we, in a more immediate need, we will help to address it.
So I just want to end it by saying, there are 59 community boards.
Yeah.
In the entire city,
Right.
but I don't think any other borough can say that each one of their boards, which in this case would be all 12,
right,
each have a vibrant nightlife.
Yeah.
And I don't know which ones they are in the other boroughs, but maybe in the next leg of what your office does, the next step would be maybe going to each of those community boards that does have a vibrant nightlife.
Yeah, and my hope and intention is to connect everywhere, and that's why I'm starting here with the heads, and to identify urgent and chronic issues. I think having sat in a community board room for many years and many hours, I think we all know what the chronic issues are, and I really want to sort of go into a new era of #NowWhat, and I sometimes, we did the town halls, and I want to avoid having a repetitive conversation of the problems and get into the solutions. And so I want to figure out the best way to be able to do that. To go to all the boards and to hear the same issues over and over might not be the best use of 4 people's time. I want to be able to speak with each district manager and chair and the NCOs in that neighborhood and say, where is the problem? What's happening? And focus and fix it, and then make it better. And if it should need be, then yes, of course, we will go. But that's a lot of meetings and a lot of people talking about the same problems. And we want to just be as efficient and effective as possible. But we would be happy to take your guidance as to where you think our time is best served.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming here today, and awesome video.
Oh, great, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I have my business cards here, and I'll be sure to pass them around, or put them at the top of the...
Council member reps, are there any reports you want to give, or... Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, this meeting is ended. Thank you.
Teachers here.